Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this bonus episode of the Rockstar Manifestors podcast. This episode is bonus because it's not necessarily current events. I'm actually doing this as a way to document some events and to have this available for reference and to share the story with other people. As the caption or the title said, it said the universe sent the police to set me free. This was a year ago. So I'm recording this on September 7th of 2023. And 1 year ago today, I had what you might call, or I experienced, I should say, what you might call a tower moment, if you are familiar with tarot at all. So basically, it's an image on some level of a structure, a big tall building, crumbling or shaking or having fire, or think I'm in LA. I live in Los Angeles. So I think earthquake, right? Like earthquake and things kind of falling based on the shaking of the ground. So that's that type of, I guess, energy or circumstance that it was. And I'll give you a little bit of background and will do my best not to venture off into not so much like unnecessary details, but to give you as good a picture, as a complete picture as I can. So instead of rambling on anymore, I will go ahead and get going. So September 7th, 2022, I did experience this tower moment. And leading up to that, I think it is important to give a little bit of a background, a short background of what was happening leading up to September 7th of 2022. I was living in an apartment with a roommate who had previously been my boyfriend. We had been dating about 4 years or so. And not that this pertains to this event, but I had known my then boyfriend, my ex, since high school. We met in high school. We had not been in touch the entire time, but we had known each other and actually did briefly date in high school. But we got connected when I moved back to California several years prior, and had then started dating from there. And it had been about 4 years. And at that point, it was the type of situation that some of you might be familiar with, in which nothing drastic or nothing traumatic happened. It was more of a drifting apart, no major arguments or fights or anything. It was just two people basically doing separate things, cohabitating. So like it turned into a roommate situation. And so I actually, shortly before my birthday, so my birthday's in April. So shortly before my birthday in April of 2022, I actually just brought up the conversation, right? Like this isn't really like, any type of like romantic or connected type of relationship. So we were getting along okay, fine. And so we did agree to end the relationship portion and continue on as roommates until the next shift, right? Either till one of us moved or found alternate place to live, etc. My ex, he had stage 4. I'm not too familiar. I don't remember actually. Stage 4 kidney failure. So he was getting dialysis 3 days a week and was on disability. So he had a very limited income. And so that's why it's like, well, we will continue and just shift things around so that it's more of a roommate situation. And so that's what we did. And I was working already 100% from home through the COVID situation, was able to do that for my job, and was still in that, and had just chosen to continue working from home. And I was fortunate enough to have that option. And then I was also still in the process of building my business. So doing both, which I am still as of 2023, but on a much smaller scale with the job aspect of it. And so between that April timeframe, shortly before my birthday, and kind of leading up to September 7th, I noticed, with just paying attention sort of to intuition, gut feelings, that type of thing, I just noticed more of a growing sense of negativity in energy, if you will, not so much in conversation or anything. It was very actual, very limited conversation. Like, hey, how's it going? You know, just kind of crossing paths, doing our own thing. But I did notice this sense like, okay, what is this heaviness around me? Not within me, not for myself. And if you can imagine, I was like, okay, I'm responsible for me, and I need to just take care of my space and my energy, my personal bubble. And so, if you can imagine, for visual sakes, I was inside of this energetic bubble, right? Protecting my energy. But a friend of mine gave me this visual actually later when I was talking to her about this, thinking about navigating the space around outside the bubble with all this muck and gunk energetically. It still affects the ease in which the bubble can move around, right? So if there's good space or good energy outside of the bubble, it moves around much easier. But when it's heavier or denser or not such good energy or environment, it's more like going through mud. And so I was not necessarily aware of that inside of the bubble, because that's what I established, that bubble of taking care of my space and my energy. But then noticing, like, there was just this sense. And so I realized, and through journaling, which, you know, if you guys hang around here at all, you'll hear me talk about journaling quite a bit. Through journaling, I had expressed in my journal this realization that whenever that change happened, like moving or whatever it is, I definitely did not want to continue living with him in a roommate situation moving forward. And so I had very clearly established that within myself. I hadn't mentioned anything because nothing was coming up yet. But I was very aware of that, and I had decided that for myself. And with this growing sense of, it is not pleasant being here around here. I actually was going outside of the home to work more, like at the libraries and coffee shops and things along that nature. I actually wrote, let's say, because I did not pull out my journal, but let's say 3 days before September 7th, so September 4th-ish of 2022, I wrote in large print letters, that I am tired of struggling with this relationship. I want to be free of it, and I turn it over to the universe. I had no idea how to do it at that time, because I didn't know. I mean, I could find a place, but I didn't know how it would go, and alternate situations, etc. So I wrote that. I specifically remember the journal itself is still in a box in storage, because I am in a different spot, obviously. So what I wrote that down and went about life. And so on September 7th, I was up. The way we had shifted things around, it was a 1-bedroom apartment, and I turned the living room into like my space, like my suite, if you will, with my work desk and office and all that stuff. So I was in the living room area, and I was awake, having my cup of coffee in the morning, and about 7-ish in the morning, I heard a big, large pound, very large, exactly like it sounds on TV, of the door. And it was the police department saying, you know, open the door and all that stuff that goes along with it. So I got up, did that. I opened the door and was nicely, I will say this, the San Gabriel Police Department was nothing but nice and respectful and polite with me. And so I was moved outside, said, come out here. Okay. So I did. And they went inside and got my ex out, took him in handcuffs out, and made sure that we were the only two, all the police things that were there. And I was not given details at all at that point. It was a group that had served a search warrant on my house. And so I could not go back in, and was told I would have to wait outside on the sidewalk. It was an apartment complex, and we were up on the second floor. So I had to go out towards the sidewalk, or at the sidewalk, and wait. And I will say that whatever spiritual or grounding practices that you have, the better they serve you in these challenging situations. Because I specifically remember I didn't go into that mental tailspin of what is happening, what is going on. I was, yes, I had that thought, but I didn't spiral there. I very much remember like dropping into, like, energetically into where I was, like, in this moment, like every single moment by moment. I was like, okay, I'm standing outside, like thinking this. I wasn't saying it out loud. I'm standing outside my apartment in my pajamas with police officers. I'm being walked down the stairs. I'm bare, don't have my shoes on yet, walking down the stairs to the sidewalk. It just this, like, very moment by moment. I'm walking down the stairs, being escorted, and these are the things that were going through my head. I was very much like, what is happening in this moment? And I can pretty certainly say that if I had not had my spiritual practices and grounding practices, I would have probably gone into like this tailspin of, holy shit, what the hell? And not that that's inappropriate, but I didn't stay there. I didn't like go down that spiral or react in that sense. And so what I was told, they ultimately did put him in the police car and took him away. And so they had served the search warrant for electronic devices. They asked if he had access to my computer and what devices were either commonly used or not. And so all that type of information. And I was outside for probably an hour and a half-ish, 2 hours maybe. And my very sweet neighbor at the time was actually homesick from work, and she had gone to get some medicine. And as she was coming home, she saw me standing outside, and she said, "Do you want my shoes?" I will never, ever forget that. She's like, "Do you want my shoes?" Because like I said, I was walked outside as I was in my jammies. Good thing they were decent. But I was standing on the grass and everything. But I will never forget that kindness. So side note a little bit, anytime you have the opportunity to offer kindness to someone, whether they take you up on it or not, just know that more often than not, it will probably never be forgotten, or it will be remembered fondly. So I was so very grateful to her for just thinking of that, right? And so ultimately, and this is where I'm not going to go into too much detail, I did not get information as to the charges, and I'm not going to go into that either because it doesn't relate to what I am sharing about. But ultimately, it was nothing. It had actually nothing to do with me. It was nothing that was done to me or against me. It was outside that, involving electronic communications and things, or like, that was part of it, which is why they came for that type of things, or that's what they were searching for. And to this date, as of now, or a year later, he has been sentenced to, he's in prison. And so that is the extent of that. I chose to have absolutely no further contact. Once I found out what was going on, I did go to the courthouse and all the preliminary like reading and things like that, so that I knew what it was about. And then I chose to very intentionally just distance myself, forgive and release, if you will. And that might be a topic for another podcast, like this process of forgiving and releasing, and choosing to not be involved in the process. And so if that's something that you are interested in listening to or hearing about, just let me know in the comments or message me at vision@bluemoonmanifestations.com. So that's that. And what I realized was that when you set and it put out an intention and you make a decision, there's no way of telling how it's going to play out. And that's the beauty and the scary part of it as well. So I wrote that intention or that statement that I am done struggling and I turn this over to be resolved in the best way. And so after all that kind of initial chaos and then settling back and like, okay, so I'm living here on my own, I actually also thought, okay, this gives me the opportunity to make this space my own. I can make it my own and have my things and get like this energy that had been there out until I am able or ready to move to a different place. Because either way, I did want to move to a different place. And so there I was. I'd gotten my computer back because they actually did have to look at it, look through it, make sure there was nothing they needed it for, evidence. So I got my computer back about 3 days later. And so I was like, okay, I'm settling into this and, getting rid of things that are not necessary to me, that don't belong to me, giving them, having his friends take care of them or safeguard them if they chose. And about, I'd say a week, because this date I did not take. Well, actually, no, I take that back. It was going to be a couple weeks because it was at the end of September. And so it would be, let's say the 27th, because yes, as I'm doing this mentally in my head, let's say September 27th. So couple weeks later. And I was working at home as I always do. And there was another knock on the door, but not early in the morning. It was the middle of the morning. And I was then served with a notice to quit, which is basically an eviction notice. And I was like, okay, but it wasn't for what, I would have thought of, because we were not behind on rent or anything like that. But what it was for, the phrasing was something about a public nuisance created by the circumstance. So I did my research. I do have a history in a legal history, working for law offices and going to school to be a paralegal. So I had this legal knowledge and background. So I did contact the attorney and ask what it was about. And they said, since my name was not on the lease, because he had leased it, he lived in that complex prior, and so the lease was in his name. I was not mentioned on the lease, and so, but I was listed as a resident of the apartment. And so what I was told was that because of the nature of the charges that had been filed, it created a liability for the apartment complex. And so they could not take the risk of, if he were bailed out, to then come back. So I had the option of staying there and, not really abiding by the 3-day notice, or, leaving, and I would not be attached in any way to the costs and liens and fines that would be attached to him. So I'm like, well, that pretty much answers that. I guess it's the universe's way of saying, nope, this is not the place for you. It is time for you to literally get a clean slate. So the 3-day notice happened to be over. So I had a couple extra days. I could have, the 30th, which September has 30 days. Yes. The 30th fell on a weekend, on a Saturday. So I would have had the extra 2 days, or fell on a Friday. And so they don't file papers over the weekend. And so I would have had until Monday. And I chose to say, okay, I literally took that as the universe saying, nope, this is time to wipe the slate clean and just get the hell out and start somewhere else. So what I did in those 3 days, I worked a little bit, but not a lot. I did really scale back and take some time, out of the office time. And in those 3 days, I went through packing the things that were important to me, my personal possessions. I threw out the things that didn't need to be taken anywhere or saved or anything along those lines. And mind you, I was solely focused on my things. Everything that did not belong to me and like his possessions and his things, I'm like, they are not my responsibility. And I did one thing. I did, because there were people that were messaging me that were common friends of ours asking what was going on. So I had started a chat so that everyone could kind of get the details and be informed all cumulatively instead of sending multiple messages over time. And so I did put in there, if anyone wanted to come get his things to save them for him, that hadn't already been sort of gone through, then they were free to do that. And a friend of his did choose to come take that thing. And that was fine. That was fine by me. And so I focused and packed. So for those 3 days and over the weekend, I did that. My mom has a property, a house that she rents in the area. And on that property is a storage shed. Those outside storage sheds, that is not for the tenant. It is for us. We have access to that. So I put all of the things that I could box and carry and that I wanted to definitely keep and stashed them in the shed. And on that third day, I turned in my keys and all the things to the apartment manager. And they were also very kind and very respectful and mindful of me, making sure that I was okay. So I will say everyone externally that was involved was very, very kind to me. And I was not impacted like legally or being involved or tied in any way. So thank you to the universe for working this out perfectly. And I went to stay with my brother for a while. And I actually did a Facebook Live about this about a month or so after it happened. So you could search that on my Facebook page. But this is a year later, and I do want a place that is easier to refer back to than having to search through Facebook to document this. And so I did. I went and I stayed with my brother. I was there, I think, about 6 weeks. And that is also I was able to do that because I had also previously manifested the time freedom and the location freedom. I don't have to be in a certain place to do my work and get things done. So he lives probably an hour-ish or so from where I was living then. And so I went down, stayed with my brother and sister-in-law, and my nephew he had not yet moved out to go to Texas then. And so I stayed there with them for about 6 weeks and was also just continuing on. And something that I want to point out that was very important during this time, I do in my Facebook group and on YouTube, I do a monthly like new moon call, full moon call, talk about setting intentions and such. And during this time, my energy, my focus was very definitely on just moving day by day, seeing what needed to be done, finding out the information I did need to find out for logistics and changing, getting things to the right people. And so I was not focused on setting intentions at that time. So about a 3 or 4 month span, I did not set like new moon intentions. But what I did do, and how intentions still plays into this, is during this time, I was very intentional about my practices. I was very intentional about, journaling and documenting, my feelings and my thoughts and what was happening. And I was very intentional about movement and going for walks and moving the energy and the feelings through me and out and not holding on to them. I was intentional about connecting with friends and making sure that I stayed in touch, and being with family was definitely a key benefit. That was just somewhere that I went. I knew I could go to my brother, so I went there. And so not setting intentions, like if you're in a space where I don't know what to set intentions, or you're in a season of life where I don't have the bandwidth to set intentions and all that, being intentional about your practices. Like I meditated, I walked, I journaled, I did do the self-check-in. I made sure that I connected with friends. These were all very intentional things that were still beneficial to me, as I was able to then get to the point where I could navigate and get back to that rhythm, or that the regularity of setting lunar intentions and taking action steps. So depending on your season of life, know that simply being intentional about your day-to-day activities and maybe saying some affirmations and checking in with yourself, writing down, how am I feeling today? What happened today? What were my thoughts today? And documenting that, letting go. I did a lot of, in that first 3 weeks, right after September 7th, I did a lot of pounding on pillows, hitting pillows, things that would move the energy out and through me, but in a healthy and beneficial way. I did a lot of push-ups. What was some other things I did? Oh shit. I did a lot of the wall push-ups because there was like boxes and things about. So I did wall push-ups. I lived on the second floor. So I will say that constantly going up and down the stairs, carrying things out to the trash and moving and like sweating, because it was in LA, it's not really cold yet in September at all. So I was moving up and down the stairs and sweating and packing and throwing. So that was definitely a benefit because it kept this movement and let this, like sweat out the energy or whatever. So I will say movement is definitely something to be intentional about, to the capacity that you can, and to move the energy through you and the emotions through you. And so that was about 6 weeks that I was at my brother and sister-in-law's place. And that was actually really cool because I got to hang out with them in a way that I hadn't really done in a long time. It wasn't simply like getting together for family events or holiday events. I was there hanging out with them, living day-to-day life, doing day-to-day things, which I hadn't had a chance to do with my brother since, good Lord, I moved out. I got married very young, which was is another story possibly, but he's 4 years younger than me. So I moved out when I was about 18 and he was 14. And I am last year at that time, what year are we in? 2023. I was 50. Is that right? Yeah. So this year I turned 51. So I was 50. So, don't think I hadn't spoken to him. We were definitely in touch, but that day-to-day type of interaction. So it was really cool. That was also very good for me, very healing, very beneficial and supportive, which I think helped tremendously. I was not on my own in any way, any sense of the word. And so about 6 weeks later, my dad let me know that the space I'm in now was going to be available. And this is a very unique situation. We all are here at my aunt's house, and there is I'm pointing like you guys, if you're seeing any part of the video, I'm like pointing off to the side. There's a garage apartment where my dad is, and I'm in a studio, but that's connected to my aunt's house that has separate entrances. So we're all together and separate, which is excellent. Also, it still gives me that closeness. And also I have my own space to have my business and do my things, but we have dinners together. So everything has worked out beautifully. And I can see how moving forward, I am now able to do so. And also in preparation for doing this podcast, I thought about it, and some lessons that I learned, not so much the experience, because that is the experience. And that is like being intentional and dropping into the moment. Like I said, that comes from establishing daily routines and spiritual practices and grounding practices. And that just came into play. So that was just something that happened because I had already developed that. But lessons, and I will say they almost seemed trivial, but I know they're not, because we hear the words and we hear other people say, this is the lesson I learned. But sometimes it resonates differently when you hear someone say it for their circumstance. So the first one I wrote down, or what I wrote, I kind of wrote it as a stream, that I am not responsible for anyone else's self-improvement. And though I was becoming aware of that in that space where I was feeling very like the negativity and the heaviness of that, I had to truly let go of, I'm not responsible for anyone else's self-improvement, awakening, personal development, spirituality, any of that energy at all. And that's where I wrote that sentence down, where I am done struggling with this relationship and this circumstance, and I need it to change. I just don't know how to do it. And that's me elaborating on that sentence. But realizing that, and realizing that that I guess it's a lesson or a realization, which may be interchangeable, maybe not. But realizing that I had actually developed a faith and a trust, and in the not knowing how things are going to work out is definitely scary and unnerving and unsettling. And at the same time, I had this sense that I don't know how it's going to work out, but that's okay. I don't know what the next step is going to be, but I know it will be fine. And that is something that you really cannot convey what that feels like, other than a knowing and this certainty, like, I don't know, but it's going to. And a little bit that I want to touch on, when you are doing things that are benefiting you, that you are being intentional, let's say, about your actions, you are being intentional about your choices and what is right for you, there will likely be a lot of external either resistance, or there will be pushback, or there will be judgments, whatever the case is. And I definitely did experience that. I got the not the way it worked out. I did a lot of all of the packing and the moving and the getting things out that I could carry and that I wanted to keep on my own. One, because my brother and his family happened to be out on a cruise for a wedding. My dad was house sitting for him and had to be down there. And my mom does not live in the state of California. She lives out of state and had not yet come. She comes for the holidays and had not yet come to California yet. So I was really there like, okay, here we go. I'm doing this. And I intentionally made the decision to leave everything there that was not of importance to me or carryable, in the sense of furniture and household belongings and the knickknacks and things. Like I said, I did pack what was important to me. I did pack the things that are sentimental or that I do want to keep. And some I have here and some are still in that shed and storage that I do have access to. But I left all the furniture behind. I left the TV behind. I left the the stuff. And really what it came down to, that I realized for myself, is all these things that were there had been purchased or obtained or gathered by us collectively when we, for the apartment that we were living in together. And I realized I have no desire to carry that with me. I had none. There were things that I loved, pieces of furniture that I thought were great. And I also realized, yeah, there's going to be some other stuff that I'm going to find in the future that will be just as good or better. And so another lesson, which is why I'm tying it to this, is that anything that that is taken away from us, or that is, that we don't get to keep in the sense of possessions wise, anytime we lose something like that or it's left behind, it will be replaced with something better. The same or better, but I would say almost always better. And I got a lot of pushback on that. It was like, well, you should go back and get it. And can you put it somewhere else? And I made that decision and I stood by it. Nope. I probably could do it, but I'm not going to. And I don't want to. And so not a lot of agreement with me on that, but for me, that was the right thing to do. And so moving forward, I will be able to get all different things that are unique to me and that I love and that I get. And however life plays out for me moving forward in that sense, I will be able. And I also know, because I've had a couple of experiences in life where just like left it all behind. And so I know that it comes back. and there's more ahead that I'm not aware of yet. And so I definitely wanted to point that out as a, maybe lessons wasn't the right word entirely, lessons and or realizations that I'm fine. Others don't have to agree. As long as I'm okay with it, and this goes for you as well, as long as you're okay with it, it does not need to make sense to other people. Other people don't need to agree with it. And it's okay to upset other people if if you're doing what's right for you. You don't need to appease other people. And especially if it's something that's chaotic like that, you, like I did, need to take care of you. And make sure that you're okay or moving towards okay. And it's not your job to take care of or appease or justify or explain any damn thing to anyone else. As long as you and the important people to so long as whatever that, connection is. And so that was definitely a realization and a belief and a trust that I stepped into, and I stood in. I defended it, not defended it, but I stuck by it, I think is best way to say it. I stuck by it, and it was the right thing for me. And people sometimes still don't understand it, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. It's not necessary or required. So I'm looking through now. I might do some touch-up points or, maybe reference this back, but that is the main gist. And I wanted to definitely acknowledge this anniversary. I don't think I'll do a subsequent one because what started on September 7th of 2022 has played out as of September 7th, 2023, today. With that, like I said, the court proceedings are done. He has gone, he is in prison. And so I was not negatively affected by it other than having my things, the things that they searched, the tablets and electronic things temporarily out of my possession. But I am wholeheartedly grateful for that. Even and myself, but my sister-in-law also has a legal background. She was a paralegal, and she's like, they didn't even bring you down to ask you questions, just to get. She's like, no. And that I honestly found that strange as well. But like I said, the universe was looking out for me, worked it out perfectly, took care of me. I was definitely taken care of and well protected energetically and divinely protected and looked after. And so it just strengthened. It was a very good, that sounded funny. It was a good realization that yes, these spiritual practices and daily practices and things that I have implemented are taking root, and they are part of me and of my day to day. And they definitely, kicked in. They kicked in that what's the word, in that chaotic, in the chaos. They kicked in because I had developed them and nurtured them and established them. So I encourage you to do that, or find the thing that is your thing, your center, your spirituality, your belief system, your values, and nurture those and make decisions based on those and take actions that benefit you. And I mean, we could go into as long as, not affecting others negatively, etc. But for your specific circumstances and your well-being, so that benefit you and your well-being, make decisions and take actions with that perspective and make yourself the priority. And I'm here to say that it has been a bit of a challenging year, but I'm also in a I didn't have to go through all the chaos of moving furniture and all these things that I can now look back on and look at with humor and things like, oh, well, I have a clean slate, and I definitely experienced that tower moment. So if you have any type of questions in the sense of developing your practices or any type of that you want feedback on or want to explore how that might look for you, feel free to message me again at email vision, VISION, at bluemoonmanifestations.com. And I'm just trying to run through my head if there's anything I have not covered that I meant to. I'm pretty sure there isn't. And so, yeah, if you want to hear or watch the live that I did about a month later, you can search for that. The same title that is on this podcast episode, "The Universe Sent the Police to Set Me Free," is the title that the video is on. And that was a live video. So there was people on the live that, that I was interacting with. And I think that's it. It feels pretty wrapped up. Even if I missed any small details, I think the overall picture is that I'm in a much better place and moving towards much better things, and having that faith and that trust in whatever your belief system is you will be taken care of. You will be guided. Your intuition, your guides, all those things are always looking out for you, always taking care of you, as is your higher self, who also knows what is best for you. Listen to that inner guidance. And thank you guys for listening. And I hope that this helped or resonated or gave you some insight as to, why I do what I do, because not only does it benefit me, I want that type of realization and that type of faith and that type of I'm a badass and I'm worthy and I'm first and I'm a priority. I want that for all of you guys, which is why I'm doing this and why I'm continuing to do this. So onward with the journey together. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I will see you next time on our regular podcast episode. Anything else? Forward this or tag people, depending on where you're listening to or watching this, if you think it will benefit them or it will resonate with them. And come hang out at the Blue Moon Manifestations Facebook page or Instagram page, or in the Facebook group, Moon Manifesting Rockstars, and come learn about all this manifesting stuff and developing these things and creating your rockstar life, really, is what I'm here to help you with. So thank you guys. And I think I'm going to wrap it up before I continue rambling any further. So take care and thank you.